Wait, we just had a technical revolution. Why are you talking about the next one? Because we Formula One fans are always chasing after the next big thing. Aston Martin and Honda announced their partnership to not that much surprise, honestly. I want to talk about the 10 most likely drivers that could be piloting that green Honda-powered machine. And one person I think is going to be a victim of all of this is going to be Late For Drugovich. I know I said in my 2024 prediction video that he would be piloting for Aston Martin, but I feel like he has actually arrived a little bit too early for the party. There's going to be loads of brand new talent coming up from Formula 3 and Formula 2, not to mention all of the other drivers might be circling around the idea of driving for Aston Martin because they're now basically a top tier team. So sorry, Felipe. I think you're always going to be the reserve driver like Pietro Fittipaldi. You two better start a club. I'm going to go from most likely to least likely. So the most likely is, of course, going to be Lance Stroll. I was actually really dismissive in my predictions for 2024, thinking that Lance's time was up in Formula 1. But at the moment, realistically, he is going to be in that car for the foreseeable future. Aston Martin have hit a goldmine, and he's been with the team for so long, he deserves to reap the rewards. He really deserves a chance for a good couple of seasons to show what he can truly do in a top-tier car. However, in 2026, he really needs to be aware that he really has to pull his socks up, or else Papa Stroll's going to have to look at his remit of wanting a champion team, and then when he finds out that Fernando Alonso is getting podium after podium, and then maybe Lance is getting like, I don't know, an 8th place here, a 6th place here, but a very distant 6th place, he's going to have to reevaluate his idea of a top championship winning team, because you need 2 drivers for that. So Lance may get the boot, but for now, I think he is safe for the next couple of years. And fair play, let him make the most of this time and get some podiums. But he really needs to catch up to Fernando because he, at the moment, Alonso, is showing Lance up. Next up, I'm actually going for something kind of bold, and I'm thinking Checo. Checo? Well, yeah, why not? He is a driver who is very experienced now with driving Honda machinery. And I can imagine that the romantic relationship between Sergio Perez and Red Bull will pretty much be on the wane by the time we get to 2026. His contract's up until the end of 2024, so he might be a free agent on the market. But who's to say that Aston Martin may not pick Sergio Perez back out of the Red Bull dumpers yard and maybe have a romantic return to Silverstone, where Checo drove for them for about 6 years. That would be such a nice poetic way to end his career, and with his Honda expertise, they'd be able to get off the ground running and actually have a driver who knows what the Honda engine is all about. I think it could be really, really cool, and I think it could be very, very wholesome. And after the years of all of that turmoil and frustration at Red Bull, of course, you get a lot of plaudits and glory and stuff like that, but let's face it, you drive with Max Verstappen, it's going to be very, very tough. Maybe this might be a nice little way to end his career, perhaps. The third most likely, I think, will be Lando Norris, because as of 2025, that is the final year that McLaren have actually locked him into his contract. Can Lando go anywhere else before then? Nope. He is locked in there ice tight. Zach made sure of that, not to mention making the most of Lando's naivete and loyalty to a fault. I want Lando to stay at McLaren because he is really, really good, and now he can actually build the car around him for the first time since he actually started driving for McLaren, because there's no one really superior to him in that team. Oscar's a young gun, but Lando can actually stay there for a good while and have what Charles has, what Lewis had, what Max has had. Maybe Lando might have had enough of McLaren and thinks that they're not really going anywhere. He might want a challenge going to another British-based team with Aston Martin. He is a very good driver, and when he likes a track, he goes like the clappers. He does have championship winning material. He can win titles. Loads of experts say that he can. And in that team, and with that Honda power unit, it could be possible. If McLaren buck their ideas up and they're back to where they should be, then Lando will stay, because he is very, very loyal. If not, all bets are off. I'm going for a sort of left field thing with Alex Albon. Alex Albon? Surely he'd want to stay at Williams for the rest of his career. That is very true. But Williams' position right now, it's not something that is really conducive for short-term success. James Vowles has openly said that what needs to improve at Williams will take a good long time to actually fix, and that's fair enough. It's pragmatic, it's realistic, but if you're Alex Albon and you want to actually get a car that can go for wins and stuff when you had it at Red Bull and then it was taken away from you, you'll want to actually strive for the next best thing. If things at Williams are just going too slowly for him, he does have very good patience, but patience can only take you so far. Aston is a very tempting situation. Alex is a very smart driver who is driving that Williams incredibly well. Had he not crashed out in Australia, he could have been on for P6 in that car already. And that would have already made Williams out to be one of the glory stories of the season. It was just bad luck and a little bit too far on the grass, and that was that. So maybe with Alex's smart head on his shoulders, not to mention Aston Martin's careful softly approach towards race strategy, that could be a match made in heaven. I think it could be something fairly intriguing. And surely you don't want me to have like a cookie cutter situation of just drivers that everybody knows might go to Aston. I want to throw in some curveballs. And I hope you like these curveballs as well as liking the video. Fernando is in the middle because it's neither likely or unlikely, because it all depends on how long Fernando is prepared to wait to get a title winning car. Who knows? Aston may get the title long before 2026, he might get his third championship, and that might be enough for him to go, you know what, I'm a 3-time world champion, I think I'll call it at that. But something tells me that he might not be that fulfilled. He might want more titles, he might want 3, he might want 4, he might want 5. It's all up to what he wants, and he has the need still. So long as he's got the need, he's going to be here for a very long time. So that makes me think he might want to just stay there until he gets bored, or he goes until he's 50 or something like that. A nice round number. Maybe he actually races for 500 Grand Prix or something like that. But I hope that before 2026, Fernando's had at least one shot at the Formula One title. I think pretty much the entire grid wants that, at least in terms of the fans. So for now, it's neither here or there. It really depends on what he gets and what his goals are. Then I'm gonna go for Ayumu Iwasa. Iwasa is part of the Formula Dream campaign of Honda's, and together with the Red Bull Junior program, have been helping Ayumu get into Formula 2 and really showing off his consistent stride. He is very good Formula 1 material, and I think by 2026, he would have been on the grid for at least a season or two. Whether it's at AlphaTauri with Tsunoda, or maybe at Red Bull if they decide to take the punt and completely overlook Tsunoda, even though they haven't really said that they're going to be swaying the lineup at Aston Martin, I think they will be pushing slightly for the likes of Iwasa to at least be considered for driving in British Racing Green. It's a little bit of a hit and miss thing. It's not entirely likely, but it's potentially possible. Maybe with the right amount of convincing. He deserves to be in Formula 1 anyway. Then I'm going for Carlos Sainz. Now, poor Carlos. Carlos at the moment is pretty much having to really evaluate his place in Formula 1 at the moment. He thought he was a dead cert at Ferrari for a long time. I thought that too, because he and Leclerc are probably one of the best lineups, solid lineups even, on the entire Formula 1 grid. If you had Charles and Carlos together for pretty much the rest of their careers, I think that would be almost akin to Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger, pretty much one of the most rock-solid, stable and amicable driver lineups of the modern era. But now we're all talking about Charles and Lewis Hamilton maybe partnering up in 2024 for Ferrari, and Carlos may be left out in the cold. Yes, of course, the whole Lewis thing is complete rumour, and I talk about this more in the video up here, but Carlos's situation at the moment is pretty precarious, and it shouldn't be. Carlos is a very solid driver. I like him. He is very, very reliable. He's done everything that Ferrari wanted him to do, to be the second fiddle to Charles, and I will keep on saying it, he outscored Charles in 2021. So he is that good. Would I want him to maybe go to McLaren, to the place where he got his first multi-year contract? Realistically, he's probably going to be one of the drivers considered for the Audi program in 2026, so I don't think he'll probably go to Aston. There's not really much for him there, but it is an option, potentially. But speaking of the Audi Sauber program, I'm going for next up, Théo Pourchaire. If Théo Pourchaire wins the Formula 2 championship, I think it's a dead cert that he is going to end up driving for Sauber in 2024, either replacing Bottas or Zhou. I thought it was going to be Zhou specifically, but I think now that Guan Yu has actually really done surprisingly well and sort of been on an even keel with Valtteri, and Valtteri has sort of been a little bit in no man's land. I'm not really sure what's going on with the guy. So it kind of makes me think that either one of those drivers could be replaced by Théo. But in a couple of years' time, if Théo proves to be just as good as he is in Formula 2, maybe Aston might want to pilfer him because he is brand new talent. But again, I don't really find that likely because he is a Sauber Academy driver through and through. He is their poster child. So for him going to Aston wouldn't really be that logical or sensical. But it's something I think could possibly happen depending on what they do. Because Aston Martin and Honda, in a year where there are brand new tech regs, it could be all to play for. Things could completely change. The entire way the grid is worked out could be completely and utterly different where Red Bull are dead last. We don't know. And Williams are now 30 seconds ahead of everyone else. We just want to get there. I want to see what happens. I'm going to go for a Formula 3 candidate for this one, and it's Gabriel Bortoleto from Formula 3. At the moment, he is utterly dominating everybody in that field. And I felt like you should include at least one candidate from Formula 3. By the time you get to 2026, they will be brand new to the grid and potential candidates for seats. Why it's down at the bottom is because, yeah, Gabriel's doing very well at the moment, but it's a little bit up in the air. Things could easily change in Formula 3. And by the time you get to 2026, he will be a rookie. And at that point, with Lance Stroll, would you really want a rookie driving a car that can maybe go for titles with a brilliant combination? I don't think so. But maybe if he does utterly well in Formula 3 and Formula 2, basically pulls an Oscar Piastri, and then Piastri does well in McLaren, maybe Lawrence Stroll might want to try and do the same thing. Maybe take a punt. Interesting, but not very likely. And okay, the least likely driver, Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo is pretty much a candidate for any team at the moment. Any team worth their weight in salt would want Daniel Ricciardo on their books because he's popular with the fans. And I know that he's gone back to Red Bull, to his family, for the foreseeable future, with the idea to maybe replace Checo in 2025, but in reality, I don't think he is going to be going back to Red Bull for a full-time driver capacity, because he's a little bit too old for that. I think he's really either going to be an AlphaTauri sub, or maybe just a brand ambassador for the team. That could easily be a fair way to actually see out the rest of his career. He has plenty of money, he's easily recognizable, and people like him. People like him, and Red Bull want people to like them, because at the moment there's a very big contingent of Formula 1 that don't like them at the moment, so they need everything they can get. But Daniel Ricciardo going to Aston, again, I don't really see that happening, but in terms of a brand image reboot, it's pretty much the best thing you could easily do. Stick Daniel Ricciardo in a Honda in British Racing Green. That will get people really, really interested. Because with all of the fans that came to McLaren when Daniel went there would be a huge increase in ad revenue and fan revenue for the Aston team when they're pretty much at the top of their game. So in terms of a PR move, it would be an absolute tour de force. In terms of an actual driver role, I don't know, it might be a little bit of a farce. Comment below your options.